Well, I think although we talk a lot about how we feed the world, people don't realize how many countries aren't exporters of food. We export a tremendous amount of food around the world. But for example, the EU has become a net importer. They just are not able to grow as much as they used to. Uh, Most of the smaller countries across the African continent are net importers as well as South America. If you took out Canada, the United States, Australia, and Brazil, there'd be a lot of starving people around the world. So I think we can be proud of the amount of food we produce, but also the quality of it. So sustainable is one of those words that everybody's going to give you a different definition on. My definition of our farm being sustainable is that we want everything to be better 100 years from now if our great grandchild farms than it is today. We want our land to be healthier. We want it to be economically viable and socially fitting. We want the whole thing, right? When we talk about sustainable crops, we talk about how can we raise them in such a way that they are maintaining all the nutrition that they have. We don't downgrade that through any research or development or varieties. We're always trying to do better. We want to make sure that we're using the least amount of added fertilizer or crop protection products that are needed. But sustainability does mean looking at all of those different factors. And as farmers, we're very aware of it. We have modified our processes over the last 3 or 4 decades that we are growing more using less additional resources and better methods than ever. And we are continually improving that. You know, I should tell you, agriculture and agri-food processing, it alternates between being the #1 or #2 industry in Canada in terms of people employed and amount added to the economy. So farming, processing the food, moving the food, serving the food, it's a big industry in Canada. One of the things we're doing is trying to let Canadians know that we're actually a carbon sink. On our farm, we actually are a net zero for carbon emissions because yes, we use a certain amount of fertilizer and fuel and everything else, but when we grow, our plants are taking carbon out of the air in order to grow the food. And when we are maintaining our fields, we are keeping all that organic matter in place. For example, on our farm, we're what's called zero till. We do not work our ground between when we've harvested one crop in the fall and planted the next crop in the spring. And that keeps the soil as healthy as possible. It allows the water to go through the very best, and it really maintains good soil health with the organic matter. It's one of those things farmers are doing more and more. There's a number of processes we can do that use the least amount of whether it's fuel, fertilizer, or water. And farmers are early adopters. I'm always amazed at how a new technology comes out and yeah, we'll try that. I would just love for every one of your students to climb into a tractor or combine or another piece of machinery, because you would look around and say, there are 3 screens in here. What are you doing? Because we've embraced a lot of technology, whether it's something like in spring, when we seed, we use variable rate, which uses a GPS map as we drive through the field and puts down just the right amount of fertilizer based on the soil type in that zone of the field. It's pretty high tech. When we fertilize or when we spray, our sprayer has it's GPS led for for nice straight lines and as little overlap as possible so you don't waste any extra fuel as you're spraying. But it also knows when an area has been sprayed, and it will shut off segments of the sprayer so it doesn't double spray. So there's a lot of technology being used to make sure we're using the least amount with the best results for a crop, which of course is more sustainable. I would love it if every farmer on the prairies had a pulse crop in their 1 and 4 year rotation. There is one for everywhere. For example, in our area, we can grow faba beans and peas really well. In southern Alberta, they can grow beans, and they do grow a tremendous amount. In Saskatchewan, where it's drier and they get more sunshine, lentils and chickpeas are a tremendous opportunity. And in Manitoba, they do very well again with the peas and the beans. So every area has a pulse crop that is going to do well for them. Now, I don't know if you're familiar with the term rotation, but it refers to the fact that if in 2018 I planted peas on a field, on that same field in 2019 I might put wheat, 2020 I'd put canola, 2021 I'd put barley, and then 2022 I'd be back to peas or fabas. So if every farmer put a pulse into the rotation, you automatically would have a better carbon footprint and a more sustainable reputation. Well, and I would have to tell you there's a lot of words out there that get misused a bit in every in every jurisdiction, but we hear them in agriculture. I grew up on a farm that was relatively small. It was small because our equipment was small, and you can only do so much land in a year, right? As our equipment has gotten bigger, that same farm can grow more land and work more land. It's still family owned. My brother farms it. Some people might call it a large commercial farm because he's incorporated. He's incorporated for tax purposes. That's the only reason. So yes, it's a corporate farm, but it's still a family farm. And our large equipment, our technology has allowed us for one person to do a lot more acres in a year. It doesn't make it monoculture, it just makes it bigger. And there is really no monoculture I'm aware of in Canada, because you cannot plant peas on peas on peas on peas on peas, or wheat on wheat on wheat on wheat on wheat. You'll get disease. We all rotate our crops. So I understand the words and the concept, but it's not a real thing. In terms of organic, it sounds really great, but I would challenge a lot of your listeners to go try growing a garden where they can't weed it. They can plant it in the spring, they can harvest it in the fall, but they can't weed it in between. And they'll very quickly find out that most of the weeds take over the crop. We have the same problems in a big scale. If you don't have an opportunity to somehow control those weeds that are stealing the nutrition, stealing the water, stealing the sunshine, and choking out the plants, you have a problem. And that is the problem organic farmers face. And that is the reason we don't have a lot more organic farms. We have a very healthy weed population.